Well, hello there, and welcome everybody to your weekly astrological weather. My name's Amanda Walsh. I'm the founder of Astrology Hub, and I am here with Predictive Astrologer Anne Ortelee, and we're so happy to be here with you today. Before we dive in, I just wanted to make sure that all of you know that the Inner Circle, which is our monthly membership community for students, is open for enrollment. We only open a couple times a year, actually usually once a year, but this year we're also opening right now because we want to be able to provide as much support for our community as possible. And so if you listen to these weekly astrological weathers, if you've been following the podcast and you're one of those people that's going, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. How do they do that? How can they tell what's happening? How can they be so masterful at looking at the language of light and translating it? If you're one of the people going, oh my gosh, I need to know how to do that, then the Inner Circle is an amazing spot for you. It is led every month by a different master astrologer. And what you receive is a new and a full moon forecast that's different than the weekly that we do here with Anne. It's more technical. We go deeper into charts, we go deeper into aspects, and you start to understand how to interpret the astrological weather. But then you also receive a mastery class training each month. So that is where you can actually start to build your base of tools, your toolkit, so to speak. Anne she's been an Inner Circle guide twice.
Mm-hmm.
She did a mastery class on the pinball method, which the community went crazy over. And then what was your last one?
Jupiter phases, yeah.
Jupiter phases, exactly. So, and then like Gemini Brett is our Inner Circle guide right now. He's doing a 3-part mastery class teaching on astrolocality. So that's where you can see where on the planet your energy resonates and different places on the planet that pull out different parts of you, different aspects of you. Next month, we have Linda Bird, who will be doing kind of like a recipe for how to sit down and read a chart, like start here, then go there. Last month, we had Sasha Benedetti teaching on the Venus cycles, which is a bonus if you join during this enrollment period. So there's all kinds of amazing things for you in the Inner Circle if you're a student, if you want to be a student, and it's for all levels. So if you're a beginner student, there's definitely things for you. We have a beginner starter kit to help you really get yourself oriented. If you're more of an advanced student, it's just like a playground of astrology all the time, every single month, and supported by an incredible community of astrology students as well. You can ask your questions, you can post things about your chart and say, hey guys, what do you think about this? You'll get feedback from people. So it's really vibrant. It's really amazing. It's open now. It's only open until next Tuesday. Next Tuesday will be our last opportunity for enrollment. If you're interested in checking it out and learning more, you can go to astrologyhub.com/inner circle. That's astrologyhub.com/inner circle. All right. I'm done.
It's good. It's off. And remember, we got like a whole bunch more eclipses to go. We're chapter 1 right now, guys. So
what? How can that be? We've already had 2 eclipses.
We still have another eclipse, and then we got the whole Mars thing coming. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's do the scale first. So on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of intensity, what do we have coming?
10 to 11. Yeah, it's an intense week for a couple reasons. It's eclipse season, so it brings things up. And you and I were talking at the beginning that you had. I looked and I'm like, Amanda, you look like really rested. You're like, I had an eclipse, right?
No, I said I was eclipsed.
You were eclipsed, right? Yeah. And the idea when an eclipse comes is it's kind of like this giant energy system, and of course it hits us at different times depending on how our chart relates to it. But this eclipse is really big, and it is one of the a lot you go on the internet and be like, oh my god, the eclipses. It is tied to these bigger cycles, right? And somebody had said something to me the other day, that it's a different eclipse than 9/11. And so there's 2 cycles, so I want to clarify that. There's a thing called the Metonic Cycle, which is every 19 years the planets meet at the same degree. So this 0 degree, and then on the U.S. chart. That's the Metonic, so 19-year nodal return, kind of think of it that way. And then there's a thing called the Saros cycle, which is actually applied to the eclipses, and that is 18 years and 8 months or 10 months, 18 years and 10 days or 8 days, something like that, and it varies. But so this is tied to the Saros, the Metonic cycle, not the Saros cycle. So if we go back to 2001, we had 9/11, 82 we had Iran-Contra, 63 we had the Kennedy assassination, 44 we had D-Day. And you keep going back, so that's why this is big, because it's on the world point and the pile on with an eclipse, and we kick up the energy even more. So eclipses and when we're in the middle of the cycle, we had one 2 weeks ago on June 5th. We had one on Sunday on the, 1 in the morning, Sunday morning. And then we have one in 2 weeks on July 5th, the day after our birthday, the United States birthday, not everybody else's. But the one that was Sunday night was on the world point. So that's a biggie. And people really notice it. In our US chart, the one coming is also on our stuff. So we have these big stories that roll through as we watch them. Yeah.
Last week you were saying that this one we may feel more around June 25th. Like
there's some stuff coming. So what happens in an eclipse is kind of like a big bonfire, Amanda, and it sits there, and then the planets come along and poke at it. You know how like the kids are sitting in the back seat fighting out, and they go poke, poke, poke. Get off
my children poke, never poke. Do that, Anne.
Well, if yours don't, we used to do that. There were 3 of us. So get off my part. You're on my seat. Poke, yes. Poke, poke, and then it goes up, right? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of, so you don't, your chart is going to say when you're going to get eclipsed, but everybody's going to get it. And because this particular eclipse is 0, it squares something called our draconic chart that we're going to offer here for people to buy, which when we get to it, which we're going to get to it, Amanda, which is your soul's chart. And so this is triggering everybody's soul. Whatever your soul path is. So you've been having all this stuff happen, and now there's a big energy vortex coming in saying, and this is why you're going through this eclipse. This is why you're on Earth now. So for all of us, we get a message about what our next job is, our next path, and also what we're supposed to work on here. And a lot of people are doing really, really, really deep clearing. When we look at we think of the country, the United States, again, apologies to those around, but the United States has Pluto in Capricorn. And so we're going in and we're looking at Capricorn things, which is government, banking, corporations, the structures we've built, and we are renovating them. So when we're tearing down statues, Mars is in Pisces. Pisces is art. Statues are art. Mars is attacking Pisces. So we're like, you're tearing down the statue? And it's like, yeah, I am. The structure does not serve me anymore. Or that structure has a story that I'm going to tell you. So it's kind of like when you find out something really bad and then you go, wow, I didn't know that. And that's what eclipses do. They make us go, wow, I didn't know that. And then you have to lean, you can blink a couple times. Totally good to blink, totally good to be quiet, and then kind of go, got it. And then you have to process. And that's the part, that's what eclipses do, is they poke it. You feel like you got to do, but really it's been around for a long time. If you chose to look, you maybe didn't know, you maybe didn't look. Maybe that wasn't part of what you thought of. And now we go. So there was a really interesting, I love Jane Pauley, and she does CBS This Morning. So she interviewed my Governor Cuomo. And he said it's like 3 things. It's the pandemic, and then it's the economic collapse, and then it's George Floyd. And so what happened was, because we've been united by these things, everybody's pulled into the story somehow. Mm-hmm. And at that moment, those 3 things, boom, 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 kind of created this, like, we're all in this together. And, you watch the world's having it. It's not just we're in it, and people go, not in the same way. Yeah, I know, but we're all going through this alchemical transformation, whether we're watching it, whether we're working in a hospital, whether we're sitting in our house, whether it's you and I doing our podcast here saying, hey, this is what's going to happen. So this week, because we're in the middle of eclipses, Mars gets out of Pisces on the 27th, and he goes into Aries, and he's there until January 7th. Now, normally Mars spends 2 months in a sign, about 2 months. He's spending the next 6 months. And he's going to aspect what I've been calling the COVID clump 3 times. Now, we had Venus, the goddess of love, go over it once. That was Italy and Spain. We had the sun go over it once, and we saw stuff. We saw the world get it. We had Mercury go over it. New York got it because it was right on our Mercury. And now Mars 3 times. And he's the planet of war. 1, 2, 3. You know, remember those old dueling things where they go pop, pop, pop? Yeah. And we enter that this week. And as we enter it, Mars triggers the eclipse from Sunday. Wow. So normally we have this stuff come up, and then we get a little time to get used to it. And then he goes whack. And we go, okay, got it. I understand it. Or I see it in a different way. And then you want to watch where you get the messages. Where you get the messages is important. So in my case, you know, I do this podcast with you, and then I do one that's a little more political and a little more techie. And I was talking about them taking out George Washington and kind of being upset that George. And I have Gemini, so I always hear it twice. So 2 people wrote to me to educate me about George's history with slavery, and that his teeth were made from slaves' teeth. He didn't have wooden dentures, he had slave teeth dentures. And I was like, okay, I know what my job is. But of course, the founding fathers are Capricorn, right? They're being affected too. They all have Capricorn Venus star points. Back to the woman, I'm drawing a blank on her name, that did the Venus cycles just the other day. So they founded the country, but they also had, and it's kind of like when you're a little kid and you grow up and you realize, you know, that your parents aren't perfect and they don't know everything, and you're alone, or you go, wow, they didn't. And I've had all these people calling in with, you know, stories of their parents being unaware when they were terrorized or upset or whatever, and they're coming to terms with that story. So that's the other thing. Eclipses bring up really old stuff that's structural in us. So we have that shift. We also have Neptune going retrograde this week. He goes retrograde on the 23rd, and he goes back to March 3rd and starts the story from then. And he goes forward, he goes retrograde until we get to November 28th. And we also have Venus going direct. And any one of these shifting is a big deal. But Venus going direct, she went into her shadow on April 19th, and she's going to clear it in July. And then last week, of course, we had Mercury going retrograde. So we've got a lot of mixed messages about stuff. And then Mars, of course, entering Aries, but before he enters Aries, he hits those nodes of fate. So you all want to watch for the information that comes into your life on June 28th, 26th, 27th, 28th. Because the 28th, when we have this new knowledge, we go, okay, now that I have this new knowledge, what am I going to do with it? And sometimes you don't want to do anything. Sometimes you want to, and I've been saying that to some people, like, you know, you meddle. You got to stop meddling. Like, sit down and stop being involved in their story. It's not your story. They got to work it out. Other times we have to do our own work, talk for ourselves, speak up. Other times we have to do work for other people because that's our job. And you and I are doing this podcast, and you offer Astrology Hub because that's your job. So you're doing your work by saying, hey, you want to learn about astrology and understand the cycles. We all have to look at where our work, we're all going to be told what our job is this next week too. Because Mars starts a new cycle. He comes across the equator, and he's in Aries. His favorite sign, He loves being in Aries. He's exalted in Aries. He runs around. He's like so happy in Aries. So we want to take that Mars energy, and as he sextiles Saturn right after he smacks us in the face and goes into Aries, we want to go, oh, okay, what's my work? Because he sextiles Saturn, and he says to us, this is your work. And, you know, back to the Do Your Saturn webinar, what's your work, by Sign and House. What's your work? What's your work? Because we're all here to do our work. That's, I mean, we can do other things too, but we're all here to do our Saturn. It's a better way to say it than our work. Because sometimes your work is not your Saturn. Your Saturn is raising your kids, and you have a job, and you have but your job is raising your kids. Sometimes, we were talking before your work is writing. You know, your assistant was saying, you know, I realize I have all this writing stuff. It's like, yeah, your job is writing. So it's understanding what we're all getting in touch with is, and as we watch our worlds blow up, you know, our job, our health, our, you know, what we used to do, it's gone or it's migrated. This is when the universe says, and now we're going to talk to you about what your new work is. And you might go, you know, I like my old work. And that's totally fine. But we're being recreated. We're having a renaissance. We're having a renovation. We're, as you put, we're pulling up the Pluto and we're clearing out the basement. We're seeing that George Washington didn't have wooden dentures. He had dentures with slaves' teeth. And then somebody said, but he paid them. But really, how much money could he bought it from his slaves? So like how much, yeah, you know, it's kind of like one of those, you go, okay, let's revise that history. And of course, if we think back, Amanda, the Me Too movement, women have only had the vote, you know, since the 1920s. You know, gay people were able to get married 5 years ago, but now finally they can't be fired from their job. So we're at this huge shift in our world, and it's very unsettling, but it's also where we're not actually attached to it, we have to let go. And where we are attached to it, we have to look at our place of attachment and see if that still works for us. I really don't like the idea that George Washington didn't have wooden teeth, but had slave teeth in his mouth. But I also go, okay, nobody told me that. And so that's the other part. If nobody told you, you didn't know. But now that we're telling you, you know, and now you have to figure out why. Why did they tell you? Why do you know that now? What does that mean you have to do with that knowledge? You know, it's kind of like when you had a gay kid, and like my brother was gay. You know, my parents always kind of suspected, but him telling is different than suspecting, right? You know, it's just like, okay, now you have the knowledge that you have a gay kid. And my mother would be like, well, you know, you work with a lot of people in that neighborhood that's very gay, what she called it, very homosexual. And my brother's like, yeah, come on, you can go there, Mom. She didn't want to go there. She did not want to go there, you know. But it's okay, you know. That's the now, you know. Like I think my husband's having an affair. Why? Well, he has red underwear. Okay, well, where'd he get them? I don't know. I usually buy him his underwear. So, did you ask him where he got them? He said they were a gift. I'm like, okay, so who gives your husband red underwear? Like, go to the next step. Right? Keep going. You can do it. And then you're kind of like, I don't know, somebody gave it to him as a present, you know? I'm like, all right, who gives a man underwear unless they want to see him in it? You know, to me, that's self-evident, but they were not there yet. Yeah. So the other part of this, if you really feel yourself resisting, denial is okay. Just say, I am resistant to that. I don't want to do it. You can't make me. Stomp, stomp. And what will happen is it will persist, because it does, until you are ready to see it. So don't worry if you freak out. I don't want to know that. I'm like, all right, you don't have to know it. It's, you know, it's okay. Your life, your choice, your path. But watch for the illumination this week. Yeah.
And I kept hearing your voice say, the first eclipse is emotional. The second eclipse is illumination. The third eclipse is emotional. And the illumination that happened for me was like, I mean, it's everything you're saying. These things that we don't even know are there, that are there. And I had an experience where I just got catapulted into my divorce trauma, but I had no idea it was still there. I had no idea I was still, that any of the emotions that I had experienced during that time were just right there under the surface. And what was interesting to experience is to feel the chaos of that. You guys, like when those emotions are up and you're in a trauma and you don't know you're in a trauma, you think it's about the thing that's happening right in that moment, but it's actually has nothing to do with what's happening in the moment. It has everything to do with what happened to you in the past. And so it feels chaotic, right? Like I always feel like I'm in this storm, like there's just like, and it's hard to see, and it's hard to even verbalize what's happening. And what I noticed, and this is really interesting because it's so Capricorn, it's so Saturn, is I just wanted to control everything. I wanted to control what people said. I wanted to control what we did. I didn't want to feel what I was feeling. So I wanted to manipulate my environment so I didn't have to. And then it was like, but no, like you need to know that this is here. You need to go into this because it's dictating things behind the scenes and you're not aware of that. And so you can't do your work. You can't show up the way that you want to, that you at the solstice said, this is how I'm going to show up in the world. We make these intentions. I would laugh at
which is totally fine.
Oh my God, we make these intentions, but it's always so funny to look back at them and be like, oh, wow, that was bold. Because if I'm actually going to show up that way, of course, there's going to be some things that need to fall away in order to do that. Right. So anyways, it was so amazing. But that process of needing to really just feel it and go into it instead of like trying to avert it and control everything so I didn't have to feel it. It was like, no, actually you just have to feel this. You have to shake it off. You have to like be in your body and feel how chaotic and crazy this feels and just know, like, no, you can't control it all. You're not going to control it all. It's impossible. And trying to is only going to drive you incredibly crazy and create separation between you and everyone in your life. So, whoa, it was rich and it was deep and it was very cathartic. Very, and maybe there's more, but I kept hearing you go, the second eclipse is illumination. I was like, oh yeah, this is
illumination. And then the cloud shifts because Neptune changes direction, right? And he goes backwards. And then Venus changes direction and she goes forward. And then Mars goes, ready? Now that you've seen it, now that you've woken from the dream, you ready? And you go, I don't really think I'm ready. I think I want to. No, I'm not ready. No. No, I don't want to do it. Or, okay, I'm going to do it and I'm going to control it. And the universe goes, come on, baby. Let me see how good you are at controlling it. It's a Pluto transit. The one thing we learned with Pluto is whatever we think we're good at, it says, I'm better than you. Oh. And he asks us to understand, we think of it as a strength, but also, to the point of a lot of times that we're cleaning out our cosmic basement. We're cleaning out our shame, our anxiety, all the hard parts. That's what Saturn Pluto invites us to do. So if we go, okay, you want me to clean it out? And it's kind of, can feel like the Arabian, the 1,000 Arabian horses or one of the Herculean tasks, but step by step, you get there. Mm-hmm. And you do, but it also is, you can rest. You don't have to do it all at once. And it's going to come to you in phases. It always does. It never just, kills you. It wakes you up. That's what it's designed to do, is wake you up so that you can see it, so you can work with it, so you can understand that whatever we resist persists. So do you want to resist here, or do you want to go along with it and change it? And how does that work? And that's this week's job as we go towards what we're going to call emotional freedom.
Emotional freedom. Yeah.
Emotional freedom.
Yeah. And the experience every time I have these, I don't know if you all have had this experience too, is that the capacity to love just grows with every time that we see these things. I was seeing Absolutely. Rejection and betrayal and feeling not good enough and all those things that were just hidden right there. And it was like, oh, on the other side of that, it's like, it's just a bigger capacity to love more of me, more of the world, more of everything that's happening. So it's even in the moment, it's always so painful. And yet if we even to have the awareness of like, this is good, like this is happening and it's good and it's okay and it needs to, like for me to evolve to that next level, it has to.
Right. Yeah. And also I often think of Saturn because of his placement opposite Leo, or his, in Leo, he has to struggle to understand love, right? And so, because fear is like the opposite of love, right? But love, when love loves, everybody kind of softens up a little. They go, "Oh, you love me, you hear me." I did a reading with a guy who's working on some relationship stuff, and I said, you're only 2 years old. Your emotional nature is only 2 years old. And he kind of went, wow, I never thought of, and I showed him where it was in his chart, and he's got this very big heart, but he's 2. And I said, you have to go pick up your little 2-year-old and hug him. And he's this big guy, and he's successful in his career, and he's well known, he's famous. But inside, his little 2-year-old baby boy needs a little loving. And it's
How
hard.
liberating for him.
These are hard. These are hard. Yeah, these are hard times for folks. But it also is, remember, everybody else is going through it. So they're having their hard time yesterday. You have yours today. Help them yesterday, and they'll help you today. Because that's also how we get through it is, we work together. And when we work together, you're a little tired. Let me help you a bit. That lean on me, I'll carry your burden if you, and then I'll give it back to you. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes.
Yeah, it's understanding. We're all in it together. Yeah.
Tell us about Neptune retrograde. What?
Okay. So it's funny, I got a note from one of my students. She said, some people say this about Neptune retrograde and some people say that. And I think it depends on how you like your Neptune. So Neptune is, he's our creative force. He is where we hook into divine light. He's considered a transpersonal planet. He's what we worship. And it's where we find our God on Earth. So in some people, like creative people, they find their God through creativity. In other people, they find their God through alcohol or drugs. In other people, they find their God through whatever. So wherever your Neptune is by sign and placement is where you find your God. And of course, when we make a human a god, they will eventually have clay feet. Or when we make alcohol a god or cocaine a god, it will have clay feet. It will show us the destructive side. So Neptune is the ocean. On a beautiful day, calm and gorgeous. But when there's a hurricane, very dangerous, and 40-foot waves. So we watch Neptune. He is the planet of illusion and delusion. And so some people hate to be deluded. They hate Neptune. They hate Neptune transits. Other people love it. They want to live in it. They want to live in the rapture. It's the search for redemption on Earth, in our little bodies that know we're connected. It's our soul's connection to the higher part. Now, some people do not like being connected at all. They don't like it. And it's where we have our addictive energy, what we get addicted to. So it's looking at it and say, I'm really addicted to that. What is it? So I have Neptune in Libra. I have 9 bookcases. I'm addicted to books, right? And so you look at what your Neptune is, why it's addicted to it, and what's the good part about the addiction, right? And what does it give you? Because addictions are helpful, and addictions, kind of think of them as passions that aren't, addiction has a bad word, a bad connotation, but it's where we look to alter our state. And I think of it, when we're doing something and we're in the rapture and we lose like an hour, that's an addiction. When we binge watch on something, movies and television are Neptune, because you watch people sitting around a TV looking at it like this. They're all gazing at this imagery. A movie, you're on it, you're on the ride, you're yelling, you're screaming, you're afraid, you're crying, and then the lights go down and you realize it wasn't real, but it took you on the ride. So it's a good and a bad planet. And people be afraid, it's Neptune. And other time people go, hey, it's Neptune, it should be fun. because it's got both sides. And really, the key with Neptune is moderation. Interestingly, someone had mailed me a Marvin Gaye thing. He apparently a documentary. They mailed me something on him, and I listened to it, and then up came the documentary. And he was the son of a pastor who was very hard on him, but he also was a musician. And, he did, sexual healing, and he got shot by his father, and he had a big drug alcohol problem, but he was this incredible musician that wrote all these beautiful songs. All of those things are Neptune, right? So it's a good and a bad planet. Would we want to not have Marvin Gaye? What's going on, right? When he wrote Vietnam protest songs, and he said to, I think he was, Smokey Robinson was talking, he told me, God's making me write this song. I'm channeling it. That's what Neptune is. He's a really interesting planet. And people either love him or hate him, depending on how they feel about him in their life. And sometimes, like most movie stars have a Neptune. Most presidential people, leaders have Neptunes. So like,
what do you mean they have Neptunes?
They have Neptune in aspect to a personal planet.
Got it. Okay.
So you drink the Kool-Aid, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I thought I liked Clinton. My uncle hated him. I really didn't like Reagan. My uncle loved him. They both have Neptune. It's where does their Neptune land on your stuff?
Yeah.
And why? And so Neptune is where you look at someone and you go, what? And they're like, oh my God. Oh. That's Neptune. And you're looking going, really, you don't see it, right? You don't see it. You don't see it. And they don't, because Neptune does that. It's like driving in the fog. And so
what
if you've
happens
driven
when
in the
it's
fog,
retrograde?
what happens when retrograde? It goes backwards. So if you have Neptune retrograde in your chart takes off. If you have Neptune direct, your chart stops going forward. So half the population has a retrograde or a direct Neptune. So when it's going direct, it's kind of like making a movie. When it's going direct, we're making the movie, we're filming all the actors, blah, 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 blah. When it stops to go retrograde, we edit the movie. We go back and look at all the filming, we put it all together and make the movie together. And then when it goes direct, we release the movie. Right. So if you think of it as, which do you have? Do you have a retrograde Neptune or a direct Neptune? And you're going to go, and remember, retrograde Neptune means it's opposite your sun, or it's over on the other side from your sun. So you're probably not going to like it quite as much as the direct people do. Okay. The direct people tend to be a little more like, yeah, Neptune's fun. The retrograde people go, you're trying to manipulate me. You're trying to make me not see it.
So I'm looking at this thing someone sent me about Neptune turning retrograde. And it says, thus activating karmic events. Do you think that? No.
No, Neptune is activating soul events. Karma is Saturn.
Okay.
They may have a Neptune Saturn aspect in their chart. Because remember, all the theorists like Freud and Jung and Maslow, when they wrote a theory about something, they did it based on their chart. So I would be willing to bet you $5 that person has Saturn aspecting their Neptune.
Okay. Well,
and then it's not karma. But in their case, it is. Yeah. Saturn is, the whole chart's karma. But yeah.
Okay. It says, remain calm, avoid fights, drive safely, be very careful. A friend sent this to me. She saw it online and she was like, what do you think about this? And I was like, I don't know. Be very careful when you sign legal documents. That's
Mercury retrograde. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So it's just kind of one of those.
Yeah, it's one of those
astrology memes
one of those astrology memes that isn't always right. But there's a lot of people, if it resonates for you, it's probably right because you picked it up, you read it, and it meant something. So your friend's probably nervous about having a car accident.
I love how you bring that up because that helps us to take responsibility for why we receive the information that we do. Yeah. And then it's like there's always something there for us in what we're receiving, right?
Right, it hooks into your chart somehow. Yeah. So that makes you go, oh, okay. So I'm not going to say Neptune is car accidents, but if you have Neptune in the third, that's how it shows up for you, car accidents.
Okay, so another question, Venus is going direct.
Yeah.
So how are we, what is the energy behind that?
Well, remember, she's been retrograde since April. She went under shadow on April 9th. So since April 9th, you've been working on matters of love, money, finance, value. And so she went forward and then she stopped and then went backwards, and now she's stopping and going forward again. So she goes 1, 2, 3 over your money, your love, your values. So how many people have heard from exes since April, done exercises around ex-partners, relationships, or have met somebody and gone, oh my goodness, you're really cute, I like you. It asks us to go in and look at our Venus issues. And of course, it's in Gemini, so it says look at both sides. So I have a lot of people going back in and negotiating changes in their child support, or changes husband's not paying, or, you know, people. I got stiffed the other day by a guy. And he got the reading, he downloaded it, he filed a complaint with PayPal, got the money back, and, you know, he took money. So I'm like, what's that about? And I looked at his chart, and he's working out his mother shit with me, but I'm not his mother, and I want my money back. So I was like, all right, what's this about? So then I was thinking back to, you know, earlier times, and I had a Marine who was a complete asshole who worked for me when I was younger and before astrology. And I was like, I mean, everything I said he wouldn't do. It was just kind of weird. So I thought, oh, this is that guy back again. I'm supposed to go in and work on that guy, because I would do something and then he would do some. And my manager at the time was, Anne, you're both very competent. You both get a lot done. And actually, this is really helpful because you both hate each other so much, you're getting a lot accomplished. And I'm like, well, you tell him what to do. I'm the boss. And he's like, so I'm like, you know, PayPal's the boss. It took the money away, but I wasn't paying attention and I didn't notice there'd been a complaint filed. So then when I caught it, then he's like, he deleted the bill, and I'm like, all right, you know, I'm back. What I'm supposed to do, go back and work with my earlier Marine, because as a strong female, a lot of times I can set off weak men. What are you going to do?
Right? There you go.
So I'm like, all right, I got it. I'm supposed to work on my setting off weak men aspect today, I guess. Go back to the Marine and go back to, well, what are you going to do if you can't get it back?
Right.
I mean, is it really worth to be this aggravated over $300? But I'm like, yeah, it's the principle. He lied and he took it and he downloaded the goddamn thing and then he filed the complaint he hadn't gotten it. I'm like, all right, I'm not happy. But I'm also like, what are you going to do? Right. So, but then it brought up this other guy that I was in this thing, which I had absolutely no recourse except to notice him being badly behaved and going, and, you know, do I want to spend energy on that or on something else?
Right.
But it brought it up. Obviously, there was some unresolved issue there where my manager didn't hear me complaining about this guy and said, well, you guys, you know, actually, it's good. As far as I'm concerned, it's good because you both hate each other and you work really hard.
Wow. And then how does it feel to not feel heard or not feel like you can do anything to fix the situation, right? And then so what did that bring up in you? I mean, it's like this rabbit hole we can go down with ourselves. And
totally, yeah. I mean, I've been in the rabbit hole. I've been bitching to Rose. I had Rose do some stuff. You know, I had her invoice him. He canceled it. You know, and I'm like, all right, you're not getting the money in. So what are you going to do? Let it go. Let it go.
Okay, Anne. So little summary here. We have pay attention to what's continuing to be illuminated for you.
Around Venus issues, because she's going retrograde.
Venus issues, yep. And if you can tap into the understanding that it needs to be illuminated in order for you to do this next phase of work and this next phase of life that we're reconstructing right now, it'll help. It's not, but don't
doesn't take it away.
Yeah, don't try to avoid them. You have to go through them. Okay.
You have to go through it. Yeah, you always have to. With astrology, you can sit back and go, but then you have to go through it, right? And that, I mean, it's your life. It's your story. It's my unresolved issues with Tony Colangelo and this asshole, and now I've got another asshole, and there's a person in the triangle. So I'm like, and they're not doing anything, and I'm like, all right, I'm on my own here, but I don't have to talk to this guy ever again. It's okay. But of course, the hardest thing for me with Mercury square Mars is I like to try with Mercury and Libra. I like to try to be very balanced and very fair and very, you know, communicative. And, you know, if this works for you, keep it. If this doesn't work for you, don't. Or you're going to resonate to things like you just said. You're going to resonate to things that apply to you. but might not apply to me, you know? So it's, yeah, that's what we're in. Everybody's supposed to see things.
And then, so you have the way you are. And then when someone else isn't like that, it's frustrating for you. And so how do you work with that? I mean, that's again, these themes are coming up. So
over and over and over. It's that serenity prayer, you know, what you can change, what you can, and know the difference. Can I do anything about this? No. All right. You're going to spend more time on it? Probably.
Right.
But I know I'm doing it for another reason.
Right. You know, what's interesting, Anne, is sometimes what I experienced this last weekend is I knew in my head that it was at a certain point, I got to a point where it was like, I knew it was irrational. I didn't want to be thinking what I was thinking. I didn't want to be feeling what I was feeling, but it was not something I was going to solve with my mind. It was not something I was going to mantra myself out of or like think differently. It had to be felt in the body and it had to be moved in the body. So I think, you know, sometimes we go like right to, well, you know, we're trying to analyze it and figure it out and be logical about it. It's like, no, it's stuck there. It's in your body.
It's a new moon in Cancer with no words.
Yes.
It's zero. It has no words. No
you
words.
said that. Oh my God.
All feeling and not being heard, right?
Right.
So I go back even further. I have Venus-Saturn conjunct, which is in Scorpio in the house of money. And when I was a little kid, my parents fed me, but not enough. So I cried a lot. So my mother heard my father walking up and down the stairs saying, if you don't shut up, I'm going to flush you down the toilet. Because I had Venus in Scorpio and my father couldn't get me to be quiet because they were formula feeding, because that was what you did and I was hungry and I was not happy, but I was told to be quiet or I'd get flushed down the toilet.
Oh,
$300. It's not a lot of money.
Right, but it brought you right back there.
Right back. Go back to your natal Venus and Saturn and Scorpio, where you're not given something that you feel you should have. Right. In my case, you know, everybody's got a different Venus. Wow. But yeah, so we understand, you know, the whole point of our chart is learn and grow, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
think the Edelweiss song with learn and grow forever. Solar return, solar eclipses, you know, Edelweiss, you know, it's just give yourself a new song. You know, learn and grow forever.
Oh my gosh, Anne, we're going to, I think we sang last week. You're just saying, I think maybe we should have
it's Mars and Pisces, Amanda. I've got songs running in my head all day long. I have been singing in every reading I've done, you know, and usually I just sing happy birthday. You know, if it's a birthday reading, I'll go happy birthday to them. But I have been every reading I've done for probably the last 2 weeks, I've burst into song at some point because some song lyric went flying through my head. And I didn't have singing lessons as a kid. So this is an Anne Ortelee voice, never been trained. But I do sing along, you know, to my music. So
good. Okay, so Anne, so the first thing is the illumination. Second thing is Neptune is going retrograde. So the movie shifts, and also look at where our addictions are, look at where our, like, what are we making God, and reevaluate and make sure that's actually aligned with the truth.
George Washington has slave teeth.
Right, exactly.
He never told a lie. He cut down a cherry. I mean, you know, like what were we taught versus slave teeth? You know, come on. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then the third thing is Venus is going direct. So it would be a great time to also look back at since April, you said, right?
April 9th, yeah.
April 9th.
So if you broke up with anybody since April 9th, call them. Unless you don't want to talk to them. But if you're going, I had a woman yesterday, we were doing a reading, and, you know, that's when he broke up with her. He mailed all her stuff back in a box, and FedExed it overnight, including her Mother's Day card. And I'm like, well, okay, why don't you, you know, send him a Father's Day card, you know, like, because it was like 2 weeks early for Mother's Day, and it would be about 2 weeks late. She's like, really? I said, you know, he's calling her friends and asking after her. Yeah, reach out, you know. He had a little freak out. So if you broke up with somebody since April 9th, check in. Who knows? Maybe they've had a little illumination. Or also, maybe not. You might be like, no, I'm good. They're gone. I'm done. Yeah.
This also
take the advice as it's needed.
Also a good time to catalog what you learned during Venus retrograde and all the things that you learned about your values and your relationship and all those. It's because then we seal it. We get to take it with us. Okay, so then also Mars is going to Aries, but also hitting the nodes of fate. So June 26, 27, 28, there is, I forget exactly.
Lots of action. It's Mars squaring the nodes. So we're at a crossroads. So we have a crossroads about how we're going to proceed. And then he enters Aries and he squares the eclipse degree. So think of the eclipse as being like a little hole, or you know how like when there's a hole in a carpet or there's a little clump and you bump over it over time. Eclipses kind of do that. So when planets come and touch them, they wake that hole up or you trip over it again. You know, you left it on I should pick that up and you trip over it a third time. So that's what Mars is going to do. He's going to trip over, but he's the planet of war and he's squaring these. So he's ready to pick a fight. Poke, 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 poke. So you may find yourself, erupting a little bit because Mars is in Aries and he wants to take action. Now, the positive use of that is take action. Don't fight with them. Take action on your own stuff. That saying living well is the best revenge. You may want to shoot them, but don't. Go do your thing. They were there to teach you a lesson. What did they teach you? Have you learned it? Do you need to stay in that school anymore? No, I want to graduate. Well, then leave. Go do something else. So this is a great time for all those ruminations to be looked at and go, why am I ruminating on this again? What the hell? But it's up for a reason. Trust it. Pay attention. Do a little deep dive. When I was doing dishes and made the correlation with that asshole Marine, and I love the military. I love military people, but, that guy was a real asshole. And then this guy, who was also a Marine, I went, okay, I got the Marine story back. What's the hell is that about, And I love Marines. I dated one, but I also am like, yeah.
Okay.
All good. All part of our journey. That's why you're here. You might as well have a good time because you're in it.
Marine Marshall. Mars.
Well, that's why they have Mars. They have Mars.
Yeah. Awesome. Anne, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. Thanks to all of you for tuning in.
And everybody sign up, if you can afford it, for the Astrology Hub because you get more, you get all sorts of really good support from other like-minded people. And that's kind of what this is also about, finding your tribe, finding the people that you resonate with that can help you on your journey.
It's
we're
all
on the boat together. So you'd be in the Astrology Hub boat rowing together.
In the Astrology Hub canoe.
Yeah. It's a little bigger than a canoe, Amanda. It is not. We need a bigger boat than a canoe. I'm sorry.
I always imagine it as a canoe. But okay, we should get bigger. astrologyhub.com/inner circle. Check it out. And thank you. It's always such a pleasure. And can't wait for next week.
Eclipses. Have fun, folks. It'll be fun. We'll see you all next week. And next week is even more exciting than this week, if you can imagine.
All right, never a dull moment.
Never a dull moment.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, and we will see you soon. Take care.
Bye, all. So long.